good evening. You are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. Iran says it has enriched over 210 kilograms of uranium to 20%. The president of the 2021 UN Climate Change Conference urges world leaders and organizations to accelerate the pace of discussions of climate talks. And with fourth wave raging, Germany agrees for booster shots for all. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. Iran's atomic agency said today that it has stockpile of 20% enriched uranium has reached over 210 kilograms. In a report carried by semi-official news agencies, spokesman Bahrouz Kamalvandi said that the atomic agency had produced well beyond a 120 kilogram target for the 20% enriched uranium set by the parliament. Under the historic 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and the world powers, Iran was not meant to enrich uranium above 3.67%. Enriched uranium above 90% can be used for nuclear weapons. After months of delay, the European Union, Iran, and the US announced Wednesday that indirect talks to resuscitate the deal would resume on November 29th in Vienna. Kamalvandi also said that so far his agency has also produced 25 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, a level that only countries with nuclear weapons have the physical capabilities to produce. Alok Sharma, president of the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, urged world leaders and organizations to accelerate the pace of discussions to guarantee making progress that allows achieving good outcomes next week. Over 40 countries agreed to gradually end the use of coal. However, some countries did not join this pledge, including Australia, India, USA, and China, which own around half of the coal-dependent factories around the world. The International Energy Agency said that pledges of cutting down emissions causing global warming, like methane gas emissions, will result in stopping temperature increase by less than 2 degrees Celsius. Carbon emissions have rebounded to near pre-pandemic levels, according to a study released yesterday, with coal and natural gas emissions surging in the power and industry sectors, even as transportation emissions remain low. Professor Peter Italis, Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization (WMO), told at the UN Climate Conference in Glasgow, Scotland, that last year they saw about 5.6% drop in the emissions because of the COVID lockdowns, and since then they have been seeing a recovery of the emissions, and they are more or less back to the 2019 emission levels. In 2020, CO2 emissions fell by a record of 1.9 billion tons, a 5.4% drop as countries locked down and economies ground to a halt. The new report produced by the Global Carbon Project forecasts emissions to rise by 4.9% this year. Health Minister Jens Spahn said today that Germany is starting a very difficult period with regard to its COVID-19 pandemic situation, with rising of numbers of patients in intensive care units. He said that he had agreed with regional health ministers that in future everyone should be offered a booster shot of the COVID-19 vaccine 6 months after receiving their previous injection. Spahn said that the country has already had to relocate first patients from regions with overburdened hospitals, urging German citizens to get vaccinated and observe safety regulations. The COVID-19 pandemic has worsened in 10 Russian regions despite a week-long nationwide workplace shutdown designed to curb a surge in infections. A senior Russian official said today that at least 5 out of 85 regions have decided to extend the non-working days announced by President Vladimir Putin last month into next week. But most, including Moscow, will resume work next Monday, with some requiring shoppers or visitors to present a QR code on their mobile phones to prove that they have been vaccinated or previously infected with the virus. Today, Russia reported 40,735 new COVID-19 cases and 1,192 deaths related to the virus, 3 shy of the record set yesterday. The country has recorded more than 8.7 million infections since the start of the pandemic. Still to come on News Bulletin. To reminder of the urgency and the reality of climate crisis, a UK science communication platform, Arctic Base Camp, exhibited a huge iceberg from Greenland at the venue of the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. The charity team under Social Development Committee in Abri celebrated the inauguration of a new building. Abri charity team signed a number of agreements with private companies and institutions to enhance voluntary works, coordinate corporate social responsibilities missions in the area, and offer subsidized products to families covered by the charity team. The signing ceremony was held under the patronage of His Highness Sayyid Fahd bin Fatik Al Said. It's worth mentioning that the charity team has worked over the past years to support the poor and the needy and provide relief to families recently affected by the tropical cyclone Shaheen. The latest charity campaign targeted individuals who are in bad debts. The team aids people and families recover from financial crises. "50 divers start a marine environment cleanup campaign organized by Oman Fishermen Association in cooperation with the Environment Authority. The campaign focuses on removing fishing nets stuck at seabed because of the great danger that they cause to coral reefs and fishing sites. The campaign also includes cleaning beaches and conducting lectures to raise awareness among fishermen and students. A huge 4-ton iceberg from Greenland appeared in Glasgow outside the venue of the COP26 climate talks today, as a reminder of the urgency and reality of the climate crisis. Here's a report.
Organized by Arctic Base Camp, a UK science communications platform, the ice has already started melting in the mild Scottish weather. The Greenland ice sheet is the second largest on Earth, but has been losing 247 million tons of ice per year over the previous decade.
We're trying to remind delegates that the Arctic is in crisis, and there's no better way of doing that than actually bringing a real Arctic Base Camp science tent and a real iceberg from Greenland.
Along with the iceberg, Arctic Base Camp has distributed bottled meltwater to delegates as a bottled warning of the scale of the melt. The equivalent of 17 million bottles are melting from the Greenland ice sheet every second. The fate of the Arctic looms large during the climate talks in Glasgow because what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. Scientists believe the warming there is already contributing to weather calamities elsewhere around the world.
This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's news bulletin, here are the main points once again. Iran says it has enriched over 210 kilograms of uranium to 20%. The president of the 2021 UN Climate Change Conference urges world leaders and organizations to accelerate the pace of discussions of climate talks. And with fourth wave raging, Germany agrees for booster shots for all. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, is good night and stay safe.